Welcome to Stuff You Missed in History Class, a production of iHeartRadio. Hello and happy Friday. I'm Holly Fry.
And I'm Tracy V. Wilson.
I'm going to start this one with an apology.
Yeah.
Because I forgot to mention in our listener mail about Quisling that Cameron's pets are super cute. Other than just being excited about Kuzco's name, listen, they're adorable. Those kitties. I love a ragdoll cat. They're the funnest to hug and cuddle.
Yeah.
I love a pupper. So,
yeah.
Yay. Sorry that I did not call out their cuteness and appreciate the fact that Kuzco apparently likes us more than other people. The highest praise I could ever ask for, truly. Vidkun Quisling.
Yeah.
I know I mentioned at the top of that episode that the way I learned about him was from Elvis Costello, which is the way I've learned about a lot of things. Thanks, Elvis Costello. I will continue to follow you around the world to go to concerts whenever I can. But there is another 80s song that was in my mind running the whole time I was doing this, which is Pat Benatar's Evil Genius. I don't know if you would know that one or not.
I don't think so.
I also love Pat Benatar, but because Quisling is almost like the archetype of that super duper smart person. I mean, he clearly was incredibly smart. Like, we talked about his test scores and his educational career, and him just, outshining all of his peers. And it's that thing where that person then gets an idea in their head that is messed up, but because they are smart, they're able to, one, do a lot of mental gymnastics to convince themselves of the veracity of their idea, even if it is in fact based not in truth at all. And also, I think there's an ego thing where you presume, I am a person of reason and I'm smarter than everyone else. So if I've come to this conclusion, it's the right conclusion. Those are in and of themselves things that happen all the time in the day-to-day world. But then you get these situations where someone with that kind of, mental state gets in a position of power and it becomes literally deadly. I'm fascinated by this. I wish it never happened, obviously.
Right.
But I still am how much does the human mind constantly recalculate and tell you that you're doing the right thing at such a degree that you can ignore the bad things that are happening along the way?
Right.
I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
It's very wild to me. I think that's I'm not unique in this. We all have this thing of how are atrocities committed and people don't stop and think, and how do they go to sleep at night? And I don't know.
Right.
It's that thing of was he actually evil, or had he actually convinced himself that this was all very benevolent in its maneuvering?
Yeah.
Ugh. Those aren't fun things to talk about at all. I'm sorry that our Norway episode was the sad one. But also, I think kind of important. One of the things that I read about him was, I'm trying to remember it because I didn't make a note of it, was a pretty recent, by which I mean in the 20 teens article. And they mentioned a lot of people seem to not know about this person anymore, and that seems wrong.
Yeah.
And I was I would not have known him had I not stumbled across a thing in a song, which is weird to me.
I'm at a point where I don't remember enormous amounts of detail about what we learned in any particular class in a lot of cases. But I do feel like in terms of World War II, we probably got a couple of sentences about Norway. No detail about how Germany came to occupy Norway, but just the fact that had happened is probably the extent of what we learned about.
Yeah. And I don't know if that, I have a theory about why that was probably the case for us, which is that, and I want to say this carefully so that no one thinks I am in any way smack talking Norway, but in terms of the U.S. public education system, right? It tends to prioritize the big players.
Right.
And Norway would not have been considered an especially big player in the U.S. in the 70s and 80s when the textbooks we were being taught from were being written.
Right.
I think that's probably part of it.
Yeah.
Which is I mean, obviously you cannot cover everything. And I don't want to in any way sound like I'm like talking bad about teachers or people that write textbooks, even though some of them have been problematic. But it does seem like someone who does something like what Quisling did, where he had a coup that, we didn't, that seems like a thing you would want to teach kids about.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, it is notable. Take away all of the horrible stuff. I mean, we can't, obviously, and I'm not trying to ignore it, but like, this man staged a coup by radio, which is a unique situation, if nothing else. Like, that's your hook for getting kids interested in history, to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, we never got it.
I'm curious about like what the response was to people that heard this on the radio.
Oh, they were like, I mean, I will say Norway, my understanding, I obviously wasn't there, but having read a bunch about it in prep for this and having read some about it before this, largely was resistant to the whole thing. Like Norway was not a country where like a few people were resisting. It seemed pretty much the majority, which is why things were happening, like all of the teachers walking out at once and all of the clergy walking out at once, and like these pretty big I don't want to say gestures because that robs them of their value, but these pretty big movements being done to say like, no, we reject everything that you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, in terms of like the immediate moment, I can only imagine when you hear on the radio, like, hey, the country is being reorged today under me. Like, if I heard that, I would be like, what?
Yeah, I would probably be like, who is this crackpot and why?
Is this a War of the Worlds situation? Is this a big fib? I don't know. I don't know what those immediate responses were.
No.
It is really, it's heartbreaking. I did not include all of the details of the testimony of Dr. Leo Eitinger, because it's grueling and it's heartbreaking.
Right.
But his narrative really is one of the very important ones in terms of relaying to the world what had actually been going on, because he was one of the few survivors of Auschwitz, which, a lot of people, the vast majority of people, did not make it out of. So he was one of the ones that was able to explain the sorting system, the way they marched people to the gas chambers, the horrible things that happened to women and children. So his account is super important, even outside of the context of the trial, because that's one of the ways that we actually learned about what had happened and what was going on under the Third Reich. So, but I didn't want to include all the details because frankly, they're hard to stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And we get the gist of it. And I think most of us at this point have heard what most of that was like.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I am glad that we have an occasion, or not an occasion, but an opportunity to talk about these, as much as they're not pleasant, because they are important. That's all. That's some sad stuff. Let's talk more about dogs that don't bark at us. I love it. Is this where I tell a story of how all the crows are mad at me right now?
Do it. I know the story, but I want to hear it again.
So, we during the height of the everyone stay home part of the pandemic, my husband and I started leaving out a bin of snacks for delivery drivers, because we were getting everything through delivery like everybody else. That just has a little sign that says like, hey, thanks for what you do. Please take snacks. They're little things like those little party bags or those lunch pack bags you would get at the grocery store that have some mini bags of like, Doritos, Oreos, etc., chips and cookies. And we've continued that since then, like, because it's just nice. It's
what you do.
Creates goodwill with our drivers. Listen, we get taken care of exceptionally well by most of our delivery people as a consequence. And recently I had noticed that there were some open bags like on the front steps and in the yard. And I first thought it was raccoons, because that's also valid at our house.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, wait, are neighbor kids like running up here and getting snacks and then throwing them around the yard? And then we saw, and Brian happened to catch it, not on a great video because he was caught unawares when it happened, a crow flying into the bin, which is in like a little enclosed area, picking out his snacks, flying with the bag of potato chips across the street to the neighbor's roof and opening them and eating Lay's potato chips by himself. So now we know it's been the crows all along.
Right.
And they did it a few more times where we were in the day, like probably 36 hours while we were like, okay, how do we want to handle this? Because listen, I'm going to admit my own bias here. I love the crows. They can do no wrong, even when they're doing obvious wrong. And so I was like, well, I don't want to, we feed them very well on the back deck. They get a lot of snacks, and really nice snacks, but we decided we would put a lid on the bin.
Mm-hmm.
And, hopefully the delivery drivers would know you have to open the lid, and they have picked that up. But the last 2 days, the crows are irate with me because they want their potato chips.
Yeah.
So I went outside this morning to water the plants. I'm growing watermelons. They're happening. It's exciting. And I got yelled at by like 7 crows for like 10 minutes. And I was just like, go to the back. There's peanuts and stuff back there. You love those. I'm not giving you potato chips because you're rude and you litter. We can't have either of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my animal life today.
Right. Yeah.
They're really loud. I was scared we wouldn't be able to record because they will stand on the roof and just scream and be like, Holly, you shrew, you fed us, and then you took away our access to the food. Listen, they're just going to figure out how to take the lid off.
Yeah.
Give it another week. I'll tell a different story. It'll be like, and then they left the lid on my car. I don't know what's going to happen. But I wanted to tell a fun story since this week has been heaviness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Crows, careful what you wish for. You got to negotiate around them. We talked about permanent waves this week.
We did.
I'm sure we both have a little bit of memory trauma of our
I have
permanent
so
waves.
much of it, honestly.
Oh, yeah. I definitely got called an ugly poodle by the cool metal girls in school.
I had so much poodle hair. And my hair is very, very fine. It does not hold a curl well. It has never holded a curl. It has never held a curl well. But like this perm hair with the big poofy front in the 80s was like the thing to have. And
yeah,
I had to have it. And it was a whole thing of getting the perm. I don't know what your hair experience was like in your childhood, but where I was living, like the economic class we were in, I was not going to like a salon with multiple stations. I was going to somebody who had a little hair setup in their basement or garage. And I wound up with hair that was so damaged from being permed over and over again. And it like getting ready in the morning was an inordinately long affair of hair and makeup. And yeah, it's not a time or a look.
I feel like you don't look back on the 80s with the same level of love that I do.
No, there are things about the 80s that I have some nostalgia for, but I sure don't in terms of like
all the style I love. Still.
Yeah.
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 And I didn't grow up going to a salon at all. We were definitely DIYers.
Uh-huh.
My mom permed my hair when I was like maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And then in high school, I got a perm at her hairstylist who similarly was like a 1. But I was that rebellious person that just started taking things into my own hands.
Mm-hmm.
I was definitely that kid that was like, okay, I can't find somebody to do what I want. I'm just going to do it myself. Fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I also started making my clothes when I was around that age. So
my mom cut my hair until I got to the age of like insisting on having it permed. There was also a period where crimping was the thing to do. And I would like crimp my entire head with a crimping iron before school.
Yeah, I mean, we could on a future episode talk about Marcel waves and that invention of that crimper, which is way back, but or a crimper.
I have seen some kids on TikTok doing stuff with crimping irons in the recent past, and I was like, is this a thing that we're doing again?
It's coming back. Yeah. I'm kind of into it. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating because it wasn't like I had a particularly lovely high school experience or anything. I definitely was, I've said many times before, like an absolute weirdo. But I still love all of that style. Ooh,
yeah.
I love it. The weirder, the better. All the space stuff, bring it on.
I think a lot of my baggage about it is that I was doing all this that involved just a lot of time and effort and expense. In a desperate effort to try to fit in, and it didn't work. And if I had a time machine to go back to my younger self to say, hey, like, do what you actually want to do.
Right.
And you will still not fit in. That situation is not going to change. But, like,
right.
You'll probably have a richer childhood and teen years if that's what you do.
Maybe, but you won't know that when you're a kid because you do want to fit in. I don't know if we've ever talked about it before, either between the two of us or on the show. I remember so distinctly the moment where I decided I did not care anymore about what other people thought. And it was, I mean, I have the sense memory like burned of like, oh, it's like the skies opened up, where I had on this particularly spacey, weird outfit. And I remember somebody being like, you look like a bleeping weirdo.
Yeah.
And I literally had this moment in my brain where I thought I was going to cry at first. And then I went, wait a minute. I don't really trust her taste. Why do I care? Really, I said something horrible and filthy in my head about her taste, but it was essentially that was the vibe of it. And after that, I was just like,
right,
the gloves are off. I'm going to do whatever I want.
Yeah, I don't think I have ever entirely shed caring what other people think about me. But I did for sure the summer before I started my senior year of high school have a moment where I was like, I'm done. I'm not playing this game anymore with my hair and my clothes. I'm going to do what I want. And that did make senior year of high school feel a lot more relaxed than grades K through 11 had been.
Yeah. I mean, I was, from the time I was tiny, a clothes horse. Like, I have always loved clothes and design. Like, I was making my Barbies like full, you know, the collection for this summer will be, I was always into that. So I think that's probably part of why it was easier for me to be like, I actually know more about clothes than you do. So, you know, screw you. I don't care. You know, I'm like reading French magazines, trying to find like pictures of Jean-Paul Gaultier pants so I can copy them. So like
fun.
I was in like a different headspace, I think, than a lot of my peers, especially because I grew up in like a beach community where that kind of beach aesthetic was the thing. And that was clearly never my thing. So it was a little easier for me to just be like, well, all right, I'm just going to put this thing and drive and floor it. Like, I don't care anymore. But I do want to talk about the salon industry a little bit.
Yeah, let's do.
I have not been in it for almost 3 decades at this point, but I did, out of college, I worked in salons and got promoted up to management and worked in management as an assistant manager and manager in a couple of different places. And I will say the story about the pregnant woman who got a perm and then was mad that her baby was not born with curly hair, 100% believe it.
Yeah.
100% believe it. Because there were definitely some kooky people in any service industry. But I think especially when you're in an industry where it's about people's appearance, which we're all very attached to in one way or another.
Right.
Like the level of kind of like wacky ideas gets ratcheted up a little bit.
Yeah.
I remember at one point, one of our stylists doing a service where they were doing foils on a client's hair. And she got sick halfway through, like throwing up sick.
Oh no. Like the client or the
client.
Okay.
And as she, you know, sorry to be gross, retched in the bathroom, it shifted her foils around.
Oh, no.
And then she wanted to not be charged for the service, but it's like, he did all the work.
Right.
Like, it's not our fault. And I was very young to be managing at the level I was. So I always had to like, and I wasn't good at it, by the way, but I was always trying to like ride that, like, how can I appease this person while not ruining this stylist's book for the week, because it's an expensive thing.
Mm-hmm.
So to lose that time and money is significant. And I think I ended up cutting her like a discount deal just to like get her chilled out and roll out.
Mm-hmm.
We may have even eaten the remaining costs on the part of the salon. I'm trying to remember how that worked out, just so he would get paid his regular amount, but she would not be mad about it. But it was just like stuff like that happened all the time.
Yeah.
Where it would be like, that's not actually our fault. Or like a person, there were definitely clients who would come in, get a service done. They didn't necessarily love it. And instead of being like, hey, can I come back for a corrective service, which would have been complimentary,
Mm-hmm.
they would try to fix it themselves at home and end up in a real bad pickle.
Right.
Because it would be like, well, now, yeah, your hair is burned off at the ends. Like you have inch-long scrub on your head because you double permed in the course of 2 days. It's a wild. The permanent doesn't mean forever thing too has come up with, I remember, which reminds me actually of one of my favorite styles of perms in the 70s.
Okay.
Do you remember the stack perm?
Do I remember this? I don't think so.
I love it to this day. I hope it comes back. It's very disco.
That might be a little before me.
So the stack perm is where, and it probably is called something different today because that happens too, is where like the hair and the rollers at the base of the neck are rolled tightest. And then you kind of match that line going up so that as you get to the top, there is on purpose left a length of straight hair with the perm rod at the end, so that like it kind of stacks out very wide and big on the sides. You've seen the results of this many times.
I've seen people with this. I did not know
that
was
super popular in like the disco scene. I love that look to this day. Mm-hmm. I just think there's something so cool about it. I love hair manipulation in general. Love. I want to love Nestler, but man, that book really made it hard.
Yeah. You're like me and Gene Stratton Porter. Really being in love like in Gene Stratton Porter until the bad book.
Every chapter had more weirdness that I was like,
oh no.
What are you talking about, dude?
Yeah.
Like, he also claimed that, I mean, we mentioned in the episode that like he thought that like a little adversity was good for your hair. And his example is like, that's why school marms always have great hair. And I'm like, what?
Well, it reminds me of phrenology. And I'm like,
100%.
Did you
it's
know?
Like super kooky.
Yeah.
And his counter to that was that like, if you're too happy, you'll get fat and lose your hair. Like, and he would point out, he specifically called out women in the US and France as being like, well, you know, when they get married and settled and they have their kids and they're happy and relaxed, as they get older, they get fat and their hair falls out. And I'm like, well, what? And first of all, not everybody. And second, some of that is just like the age of your body causes changes.
Mm-hmm.
These things happen. But he's like, nope, it's the happiness.
That's weird.
It's super duper weird. Yeah, I just kept flipping pages and being like, what are you talking about, sir?
Mm-hmm.
However, I do want to talk about his time as a barber surgeon. Because he told this story, no way to verify it, but it's funny-ish, that when he was a fairly young barber surgeon, a man who worked in like an industrial trade came to him with an injured finger. He didn't see a way that the finger could be fixed, so he amputated it.
Okay.
And that the man's wife was initially really angry about the whole thing. But then, because of the amputation, the employer of that man had given him like a big payout, like as a, I don't know if it was a settlement or like what, or hazard pay or whatever. But after that, he claimed that a lot of people from the area were coming to him, asking him to amputate their fingers so that they too could get a similar payout. Basically asking him to participate in a fraud scheme.
Wow.
To get what wouldn't have been called workman's comp at the time, but was essentially the same concept. And I'm like, I wonder if that's true. And if so, wild. But he never said, to the best of my knowledge, whether or not he
did it or not.
Did any of those.
Okay.
I hope not. I hope not.
Okay.
But it also speaks to the level of desperation someone would have where they're like, I could live without a finger.
Yeah.
If it makes my life financially easier.
Yeah.
Oh, hair things forever.
Yeah.
Hair things. Yeah. I'm imagining also his wife. This is another thing that never comes up, but I'm like, this had to have happened this way, right? His wife was his test subject.
Right.
It didn't go right in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
She had burnt hair and a burnt scalp sometimes. But also I'm like, how long did he have to wait in between for the hair to grow out?
Maybe he was just doing a little bit at a time.
Maybe. I don't know. But also, she must have genuinely adored him because she was like, yep, let's see if it burns my head again. Let's just do it. It's worth it for you.
Mm-hmm.
In public.
Wow.
Like with an audience watching. Oh, I'm glad we don't have to do any of those. I'm now also flashing back to the many perms and other hair treatments I have given people over the years when I was a kid and in high school and college.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of hair, actually. I gave a lot of haircuts.
Yeah.
I did a lot of colors. I did a fair number of perms.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure my only perms were with someone who did hair in their garage or basement. Not my mom. Mom did cut my hair, but not perm it. I did color my own hair at a number of points. But I never tried to perm my own hair because I was scared to.
I never permed my own because I didn't want to do the rollers by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Even now, right? Like I had to train my husband to do bleach application on the back of my head because I can't maintain my purple without it.
Right.
And I'm too lazy to go to a salon for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like it's time intensive and I don't like the idea of sitting somewhere unable to walk about my house at whim.
Right.
With bleach on my head and then a color because it's a 2 process. So I still am doing a DIY situation.
Mm-hmm.
Which I've said this before. I'm sure I will say it again. If you are thinking about getting a fantasy hair color, I hope you're outgoing is what I will say.
Yeah.
Because people will stop you and ask you about it everywhere you go.
Yep. People will ask all kinds of questions.
Yes.
And ask to touch your hair or just touch your hair without asking, I imagine.
Yeah, that doesn't bother me so much. I recognize it as problematic, but it doesn't bother me too much.
I also recognize that there are a lot of people who get unwanted touching of their hair. It's not just
for
people
sure.
with bright hair colors.
For sure. And you should always ask someone. Or maybe just don't. But like in a case with that, like normally what happens is like I will be in a discussion. Here is the most common version of that.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get your hair that color? And we'll start talking and they'll say, because my kid wants it and I want to make sure it's safe. And then if they're like, can I touch your hair? Because they're wondering how damaging it will be. I'm like, sure, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I will give hair tips for days. My poor beloved has often come around the corner in like a grocery store or a big box store and found me deep in a conversation with like a mom and her teenage daughter writing down lists of what they should use.
All the products.
But yeah, it's all fine. It's great. So yes, I be ready if you are going to do fun hair for upkeep and to talk to people that are strangers.
Yeah.
If you're good with those, you're golden. Anyway, I could talk about hair forever because I do love it. If you're getting your hair done this weekend, I hope you love it and that it's a fabulous time and you love how it turns out. If you have other time off. I hope you get some relaxation in. Watch some good movies or TV if that's your thing. Hang out outside if that's your thing. Hug your pets. If you don't have time off, I still hope you get to do some of those things. And I hope that everybody is cool to everybody. We will be right back here tomorrow with a classic episode. And then on Monday, we will have a brand new one.
Stuff You Missed in History Class is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.